The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, my name is Jillian Schaefer and I'm the Marketing Coordinator for SWK Technologies. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, Customer Testimony and AP Automation, 4 Ways to Improve Your 2021 Playbook, presented by Rhonda Green of AvidXchange, Donna Gardner of Crumley Roberts, and Daryl Boyd of SWK Technologies. A little housekeeping before we get started. Next slide, please. Everyone has been placed on mute to keep the background noise down. However, you can submit any questions you have throughout the webinar. To submit a question, look for the question section in your GoToWebinar. We will answer all questions at the end of the presentation. We are recording this presentation and it will be distributed tomorrow to all attendees as well as to those who registered but were not able to attend. Please take a moment during the presentation to answer our 2 poll questions. AvidXchange will also be offering a $50 gift card if you select that you would like to see a personalized demo of AvidXchange in the final poll question. With that said, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to attend our webinar. We're here to help you get the most out of your software solutions and help you find an easier way to run your business by providing you software and industry knowledge, tools, and support whenever you need it. So whether you're here doing research for a new solution or you're just here to learn, we'd like to encourage you to ask any questions throughout the webinar. Lastly, as a quick reminder, SWK is constantly sharing important updates and software tips and tricks on our social media channels, so we encourage you to follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Rhonda.
Thank you so much, and thank you for attending today. I'd like to introduce myself and the other members of our panel. I am Rhonda Green, and I am a Principal Solutions Consultant here at AvidXchange. I actually joined Avid about 9 years ago and created our Payment Services division, built that team up, and that's the team that facilitates payments on behalf of our Avid Pay customers. And before joining AvidXchange, I was actually a longtime AP manager for a few different large companies. So AP automation is something that's very near and dear to my heart. Now I'd like to turn it over to Daryl to introduce himself.
Thank you, Rhonda. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Daryl Boyd, Sales Director with SWK Technologies, which is my title, but my role is really to serve as a specialist for all things automation and especially AP automation with AvidXchange. So really happy to be here with you today, and hopefully you can get what we intend for you to get out of this, which is some guidance on how to evaluate and consider different solutions for AP automation, but specifically AvidXchange. With that, I'll turn it over to Donna to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, Donna Gardner with Crumley Roberts. I'm the Director of Accounting and Financial Reporting. A happy Avid customer who was willing to come in and chat with you all about my experience. Our firm has grown significantly over the years from a very small law firm with 1 office to at sometimes 10, 15 offices in several states. We are a plaintiff's firm, meaning we do personal injury, workers' compensation, Social Security, disability, and product liability. I am always looking for better, faster mousetraps with accountability, security, anything that'll help us do the kind of mundane tasks better, faster, so that my people can do more valuable things. So looking forward to speaking with you all today. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna and Daryl. So let's go over the agenda. Today we're going to talk about common challenges finance professionals are facing and how leveraging technology can transform your business. Also, automating AP and 4 ways that can help improve your playbook. Also, we're going to talk about how AvidXchange can help. And then finally, at the end, we'll leave time for Q&A. So we've checked in with 500 U.S. business leaders recently, ranging from middle management to C-level executives, and we wanted to learn about their challenges and priorities as they geared up for 2021. So we asked them what they expect their businesses to grow this year, what they expect their biggest challenges to be, and if they plan to invest more in digitizing their business processes. And as you can see, this is what we were told. 68% believe that they're in a good position to grow, but there are still a few key challenges, including getting new essential tech solutions integrated into the workforce and concerns about operating in a hybrid workforce. I know with COVID, we all had to learn last year and learn quickly how to kind of move things around and work from home. And a lot of times, especially with AP teams, they're not typically a team that you would think of as working remotely. So there were a lot of learnings that we all had last year, and they continue to have that on their minds this year. And another thing is unanticipated cash flow issues. So Donna, what does 2021 look like for Crumley Roberts?
Yeah, for us, we are looking at probably COVID type operation, as I'm sure most everyone else is, for at least half of the year. And we are also have learned a lot, like I am sure most of you have as well, about the fact that our people working remotely has not been as bad as we thought because of some of the things we put in place previously. And so we are looking towards 2021 as kind of, as you said, hybrid. It's a hybrid year, and I think it's a year that we can really examine everything and do things differently, almost from being forced to do it that way.
Totally, I completely agree with that. And as if you've already tackled AP automation, are you looking at any other tech solutions?
We always are. I'm a big tech nerd, so I'm always looking at any kind of automation, better mousetraps, more accountability, anything that will allow us to work more flexibly, more, let's say, structurally sound, and with just, better accountability.
Love that. So how leveraging technology can help you overcome your key challenges? And for sure, the good news is that technology can definitely help. As you can see here, increases efficiency. Access from anywhere, I think, is key. 63% of business leaders believe at least half of the American workforce will continue to operate remotely in 2021. And of course, it helps drive growth. So 54% of companies believe that digital technology will be pivotal to the growth of their teams this coming year. So Donna, were any of these key challenges that you were looking to overcome when you were looking to automate?
Yes, we're always looking to increase efficiency, and access from anywhere became more of an issue than we thought it was going to be this year. And so, yeah, we're definitely, efficiency is always forefront in my mind.
Wonderful. And Daryl, what are you hearing when you're out talking to different people?
Well, Rhonda, interestingly enough, and this is consistent with what Donna just mentioned, is the expectation was that when people suddenly had to work from home, that they would be less productive. But ironically, people are reporting that they're actually more productive. And if you think about the time they recoup from not having to stare out the windshield during the rush hour drive time to and from work, it makes a big difference. And I think also people are more comfortable with balancing their schedules, their work and home life when they're working from home. And especially now with so many families having kids at home, being homeschooled or remote learning, it makes a big difference in their productivity because they don't have to watch the clock so much anymore.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And even on a personal note, I definitely realized that I was able to accomplish a lot more working remote. I absolutely love, working with all my teammates, but I just think it allows you to focus a little more.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are rethinking the need to be in the office, even after, it's okay to go back in the office. I think a lot of companies are going to rethink whether it's even necessary.
I definitely agree with that. So next slide. So how can AP automation improve your playbook this year? So as you can see, again, 4 ways automating AP can improve your playbook with increasing efficiency and flexibility. Increasing AP security, I think this is a very relevant topic. I know when I'm out talking to my peers in the accounts payable space, it seems like most of the time they're telling me that they have experienced some sort of fraud, specifically related to paper checks. So it's very important that companies are keeping that in mind and doing all that they can to prevent fraud from occurring. And then obviously saving your company money is something that is definitely on top of minds of finance professionals. But I think sometimes we don't think about automation being able to improve supplier relationships. I mean, you actually gain a dedicated team that can assist your suppliers and ensure that they're getting paid on time. So 4 ways that we're going to be able to help you. And Donna, what key benefits have you seen from automating your AP?
Yeah, this is my favorite slide because I can speak to all 4 of these. The efficiency and flexibility, it allows you to not be stuck with, say, one person is out of the office for a while and their invoices don't get approved. The AvidXchange allows you to, I won't get into the weeds on it, but designate people. It's efficient because the bills go in and are actually what do you say? What's the word you say when you guys are taking the bills and putting them into the system? I can't think of the word.
We're capturing the invoices and getting them started in the workflow.
Yeah, that was really that's helpful. AP security, I can speak to that specifically in that we actually had a bunch of vendors call us before we had Avid that our invoices had not been paid, and we were very confused because we had issued the checks. We called the local post office, and the post office box, the big box outside the post office, someone had broken into it and stolen all of the checks that were paper checks being mailed to pay bills. For everyone in that mailbox, those checks didn't go anywhere, and that was kind of an eye-opener. Yeah, and we see, I mean, I'm sure everyone is seeing check fraud like crazy. I mean, if you don't have positive pay or something on your account, you're in trouble. And I know that Avid, they're taking responsibility for the checks, so it's kind of one more thing off your plate. And the money side for us was actually phenomenal. We were able to upgrade our staff because being able to let people move out of these routine tasks and do things that are more valuable to the company, that was absolutely huge. And the supplier relationships, it's just really not, again, it's something off of our plate. We direct our suppliers, and this was something we didn't actually even realize when we got AvidXchange, was that we really wouldn't be dealing with our suppliers very much anymore. Once they got used to dealing with Avid, that's their go-to, and that takes all of that follow-up, all of that, so much of that off of our plate in the department. So all 4 wins.
Well, that's wonderful, and I'm certainly glad to hear that. And Daryl, is there any one particular one here maybe that you hear when you're talking to people about automation? Is something coming to the forefront for you?
Well, sort of like Donna, this is one of my favorite slides too, because it's so hard to pick because you get feedback on all of these. But so I'll hone in on one in particular because I've always thought that one of the big differentiators for the AvidXchange solution is the extent to which it's a supported experience. So there are these support teams on both the invoice side and the payment side who are making sure that the transactions flow smoothly in the background. And to Donna's point, most of the time when there's an issue of some kind or a challenge to overcome, you might not even know about it until after the fact because there's a service team taking care of all that for you. So yeah, that's the consistent feedback I get from customers, is they really enjoy the extended staff, if you will, that they have as a result of being an AvidXchange customer.
It's wonderful. Thank you. So we're going to explore the efficiency and flexibility that can be gained from automation. So of course, visibility is huge, and we all learned that this past year with suddenly accounting teams didn't have access to their AP information. They couldn't pull up their invoices. They couldn't cut paper checks. So visibility is definitely something very important that you'll gain with automation, and also just simplicity. To both, Donna and Daryl's points, it's so much easier to have everything right at your fingertips. No more wondering where that invoice went. I believe I took it down to John's office and I haven't seen it in 2 days. So that will go away. And of course, approving invoices and payments more quickly. You'll find that the speed of which you're able to process your payables will greatly increase, and you'll gain centralization. So you'll have all of your invoices and payments in one place, in one clean repository. And of course, again, the accessibility, huge. I think I heard that from more people this past year than anything. It was one of the reasons that they started looking at automation, is because they needed to be able to, get their invoices. They need to be able to pay their suppliers. Donna, are you still working from home? Is your team working from home?
We are in and out of the office. We don't have to be in. One person has to be in because we have another reason. We have checks that aren't AP checks that have to be cut for clients. But so we're in and out, so we can basically flex wherever we want to be. We can be. And one thing I also wanted to speak to really quickly was the centralization of the invoices. It's really nice because in the system, the person who's responsible for either a department, a property, an area, can always go back and look at their invoices, so they don't have to contact you to see their invoices. So if they have an ultimate responsibility or they are an approver in some way, they can go back and look at invoices when they want to research things. And there's another thing that's off your plate.
Oh, that is a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. And Daryl, would you add anything that you're seeing from any clients?
Generally speaking, I would say that the aha moment for many of our customers is the speed with which they can execute transactions, invoices, and payments. So when they do the comparison of the before and after, the gains are dramatic. They're cutting down the time it takes from receipt of an invoice to issuance of a payment by as much as 70%. And as we've all heard before, time is money. So that speaks directly to their ability to cut costs.
Yes, it does. And that is a great point. And I think for sure, having been myself in the manual AP process world, back years ago, I definitely can appreciate all of the efficiencies that automation can provide. And I think that's probably why I'm so passionate about it. And I love having conversations like this, is because it really, truly does make a huge difference. Next slide. So again, we always like talking about AP security and how AP automation can help. Some of these, I think some of these statistics were a little eye-opening. 49% of organizations globally said that they've been a victim of fraud, and that's actually increased and is up from 36%. And 64% of organizations said losses could amount to $1 million. 52% of all frauds are perpetrated by people inside the organization. And I know we don't like to think about things like that, but unfortunately it does happen. And then 31% of fraud events were in the form of cybercrime, which I have definitely seen increase over the last, 4 or 5 years. Donna, I know that you mentioned your incident that you had with the mailbox being broken into, and you also mentioned positive pay. Is there anything else that you could add that you feel like has helped you with tackling fraud from an automation standpoint?
I don't think anything, again, just not having checks leaving the office. I think the visibility of the invoices to all of the accounting to, the more eyes on things, the better. So there's more visibility and more accountability with the approvers having the responsibility of approving. So they've seen their invoice when they've approved it. So that's just another eye looking at it and say, this vendor, I don't know this vendor, and I'm not sure why I was assigned this, and red flags can go up.
Excellent, thank you. So now we'd love to take a quick poll of the audience. Has your organization ever experienced a fraudulent scenario? So if you'll just take a few seconds to answer.
All right, and it looks like we had 50% respond with yes, 25% responded no, and 25% responded I'm not sure.
Thank you for that. And I think that definitely is not surprising. Going back to what Donna was talking about in her personal experience, and the same with mine. It really is something that continues to happen. And unfortunately, paper checks are really the main target. So as we're looking here is an example, obviously, of what a paper check looks like, but there's actually different types of check fraud. And as I mentioned, checks remain the most often targeted payment method by fraudsters. And check fraud accounts for the largest financial losses across all types of fraud. So that's a pretty impactful statement. So the information needed to commit check fraud is unfortunately readily available on a check. And as we can see here, they can have the account information, the company name and information, even the check number. And we see that, checks can be stolen. They can be altered. The ink can actually be washed, and the payee and the dollar amount can be changed. Also forgeries, folks getting a hold of maybe blank check stock and forging signatures. And then of course, counterfeit checks. There's, teams out there, unfortunately, that's what they do is work on how to commit fraud and, how to kind of get away with it. And I will definitely say that in my time in the AP world, positive pay was the single best thing that's ever happened. I mean, I worked for a very large telecom company, and back 10, 15, 20 years ago, we would see a couple checks at least a month that, if not more, that were being stolen. So we would have a vendor call in and tell us, hey, you didn't pay us, and we would look and said, well, we paid you on check 1, 2, 3, 4. But when we would receive a copy of that check from the bank, sure enough, that payee information had been changed. And so we had no idea until the legitimate vendor called looking for their funds. And so positive pay is definitely the easiest thing that you can do to prevent check fraud, particularly payee positive pay, because not only does it match on the check number and the dollar amount, but also the payee name. So very important to think about security on all of your payment types, but particularly on checks. So let's talk a little bit about how AP automation can enhance AP security. So that security monitoring, the 24/7, if you will, protection of your data. When you automate, you'll also have data security. We protect many different data types and information. No more paper checks floating around the office or storing sensitive information in a filing cabinet. You're going to love having your information secure in the cloud where you can access it from anywhere. Next slide, please. And then, of course, saving your company money. I think that's something that we're always thinking of is, how can we do more with less, or how can we just do better? So, a couple of things to consider here, and I'm actually going to kick it over to Daryl in a minute because I know, he's out in the field a lot talking to folks, but AP automation solutions can actually cut AP costs by as much as 60%. That is incredible. And as you can see here, the average cost to process an invoice is $22. And Daryl, when I'm talking to folks, they don't realize that. They have no idea of, what the cost really is to process paper invoices and to cut paper checks.
That's true. And that's why in most cases, we will go through a return on investment analysis. And part of that is to get a good feel for what is the current process and what are you currently spending. And you're right, a lot of times they don't know that, and we help them to figure that out so we can show them, of course, the dramatic change after automating. And it is dramatic. And part of the reason for that, and we talked a moment ago about how much this is a supported experience with service teams. And the fact is that if you look at that $22 per invoice cost, about 60% of that is in labor. And that will be dramatically reduced because now you've shifted that cost for labor to AvidXchange folks, which your labor rate tends to drop dramatically. And it affects the overall cost of the process, not just on the invoice side, but on the payment side as well.
So absolutely great points. And again, you know, I always encourage people, if you don't know how much it's costing you today to process invoices or checks, to sit down and try to figure it out. You will be surprised because not only are you including things like, you know, on the check side, postage and envelopes and things like that, but as Daryl mentioned, the labor involved in cutting paper checks and actually stuffing envelopes, it really does add up. So next slide. And finally, that improving supplier relationships. So when we're talking about improving supplier relationship, there's actually a few ways that we can help. So suppliers will have a dedicated team that can help them assist with inquiries and questions directly. So if your vendor has a question about the payment that they received, we're just a phone call away. Also, that team is ensuring that suppliers are paid on time every time and in their preferred payment method. And again, building stronger relationships with your suppliers actually lowers volatility in that supplier chain. Donna, I know you mentioned this a minute ago, but you know, can you talk to us about what that team that's, you know, not only enrolling vendors but also following up on payments, you know, how much has that saved your team time?
I can't even estimate it. And the funny thing is, you ask, you know, me to speak to it. I can't because it's so invisible. We don't.
I love that. I love that.
So, I mean, what better testament? But yeah, it's invisible. I don't know how many times they're calling you. I don't know what you're talking to them about, but I know that we're not taking a lot of the calls. And, you know, once we get them in that mindset, it's invisible for us.
That is wonderful to hear. I'm super happy to hear that.
That's consistent with what I'm saying too. One of the things about the solution is, and just generally speaking, you know, AvidXchange gives the same care and feeding to the vendor community that they do to the user community. So there are tools for them that make it such that the customer's phone will not ring quite as much with inquiries. And of course, the major one is always, when can I expect my payment to be here? And because Avid treats vendors like customers as well, they have mechanisms to get that information without having to bother the customer. So it just works out better on both sides.
That's wonderful and definitely worth mentioning. And I think, you know, Daryl, as you know, you were talking about ROIs. It's just thinking about all of these little things, you know, just all of the additional benefits that you gain from automation. So the current AP process. When we're talking about the current AP process, and if you're not automated, obviously we're talking about a manual process. And, you know, this is typically what a current AP process looks like, and definitely something that I am very familiar with. You know, paper invoices are coming in. At least today, more and more vendors are sending invoices electronically. So at least that's a big help. But you know, someone still has to open those paper invoices. They have to open that mail and route it all around. They may or may not be matching invoices to POs. They're having to code them. A lot of times this could be still writing, you know, handwriting the code on the invoice. Someone needs to approve. Probably this is happening via email. And then someone has to enter that information in. So they're capturing all of that information off of the invoice and doing all of that data entry. And then ultimately posting those invoices to the general ledger. And then on the payment side, cutting those checks and then filing everything in file cabinets, which can ensure, you know, not be a pleasant thing when it comes to research. If you need to go and find something, or if an auditor comes in and they request an invoice and you can't find it in the file cabinet, someone has filed it incorrectly. That is a gut-wrenching feeling. It's to not be able to produce the samples that the auditors have requested. So let's talk now about what your future AP process can look like. So if you remember, we had multiple steps before, and now all of those steps can be reduced down to 3. And these are still the 3 main tasks that you, of course, would still want to be responsible for. And that's coding your invoice, approving it, and then ultimately posting it to the GL. So as far as coding goes, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, we have tools that can help you with the coding process. And of course, approvals, we're still going to set up your existing workflow approvals like you have today, but now it will be automated. And then ultimately, all of that invoice information will flow back over into your accounting system for you to post to the GL. So, 2 automation solutions. So, you know, I know a lot of people typically when they think AP automation, they think the invoice process, right? Because that's where they're probably experiencing some pain. Again, those manual processes are really, you know, labor intensive. But there's also automation on the payment side, which typically what we hear after a company automates their payments is, my gosh, why didn't I do that sooner? It's so much easier. We don't even have to think about it anymore. It's just literally a push of a button. So we're going to start first with AvidInvoice. And so you may be asking, well, how do you get those invoices, our invoices, into your system? And we can actually do that in a few different ways. We will create an email address so that your company's suppliers can send those invoices directly to that email. Also, we've got a PO box that we will open up in your name that will actually manage those paper invoices. So we're actually going to be gathering everything that comes into those boxes and getting them scanned into the system. And then finally, if you receive any invoices still in your office, maybe the landscaper just drops the invoice by the front desk, you can actually scan that into the system yourself. So that it is captured and entered into the workflow. And once those invoices have been captured, they're actually going to go into an approvals queue. So what's going to happen is that your approvers will now receive an automated email letting them know that they have invoices to review and approve. And so no more are they, having to shuffle pieces of paper or emails here and there. They're going to have all of their invoices in one location for them to be able to review and analyze. And also in that manual, approval process, paper invoices, it just really is slow. It just slows down the payables. And as we've spent some time talking about the efficiencies that's created, just imagine just getting that email and knowing that, boom, you can go right in and see all of your information and make those approvals. And so workflows and approvals. Oh, I'm sorry, could you back up one, please? Here we go. And so this is actually what your end users will see once they click into those invoices. And as you can see, they have access to all of their invoice information. It doesn't matter if your invoice is 1 page or 100 pages, all of those pages will be here for you to review. And that header information that you see there on the left-hand side, that's the information that between our technology and service teams, we're capturing that information off of your invoice. So of course, things like invoice number, invoice total, the dates, and of course the supplier. And the really cool thing here is that when you're going through onboarding, we're actually going to upload your master vendor file right into Avid Invoice so that the invoices, when they come in, will always be matched to an approved vendor that you have already created in your accounting system. So you'll continue to do your due diligence just like you do today, and every time you add a new vendor or maybe change of current vendor's address, all of that information will sync over and always be up to date for you inside of Avid Invoice. And then down at the bottom is where the coding happens. And again, just like with your master vendor file, we're going to upload your chart of accounts. So all of the coding that will happen is still looking exactly like it does for you today. So these fields that you see here, property codes, accounting codes, description, all of those can be configured to match your current GL setup. So if you use business units or maybe company codes, this will mirror your exact process. And the beautiful thing here is that while you're still responsible for assigning the coding, we do have tools that can help. And it will actually, if you turn on what we call smart coding, it will remember how the previous invoice was coded. Particularly helpful with recurring invoices, things like utilities that are typically coded the same way month over month. You can turn that on and just know that the system will automatically apply your coding for you. So all you're really having to do here is just review it and then approve it to send it down to the next approver in the workflow. And then ultimately, after all of your invoices have been coded and approved, they're all batched and then sent back over to your accounting system where they'll be received, and it will look as if you've entered those invoices yourself. And then at that time, of course, that's when you can post those invoices to the general ledger. So if you need to make changes, you can do so before ultimately posting it. So again, can you imagine taking your paper-based process and moving it into this wonderful automated workflow where, again, as long as you have access to the internet, you're going to be able to access your information. And now we'll flip over to the payment side, AvidPay. And so, of course, the next logical step in your payables process, once you've coded and entered all the invoices, is to pay them when they become due. And what happens with AvidPay is really all about the power of the network, the AvidPay network. Currently, this slide is actually out of date because our supplier base is ever growing, but now it's well over 700,000 suppliers that are submitting invoices and receiving payments every single month. And with AvidPay, we actually offer different payment methods for your vendors to choose from. So no longer do they have to accept just a paper check. There's actually 3 different payment methods, including a check. So of course, if a vendor says, no, I don't want to receive an electronic payment, I want a check, then that's okay. We'll cut the check and we'll stuff the envelope and we'll mail it out. But the beauty here is that your suppliers can choose from electronic payments. We actually offer virtual cards, which is for us a 16-digit MasterCard number, and it's created for a specific vendor and a specific dollar amount. So once that card number, that MasterCard number is processed through the system, then it's no longer valid. So if you send us a payment to that same vendor next month, we're going to create a new 16-digit MasterCard number. Extremely secure payment method covered by all of the same protections that you would expect in the MasterCard network. And then finally, the other payment method is AvidPay Direct, which is APD for short, but it is an enhanced ACH payment. So we actually send your vendor an email directly to them that contains rich remittance information so that they can easily apply their payment. And here again, the vendor is actually in control over deciding how they want to receive their payment. And also what we typically see is that on day one, new clients actually see about a 30% supplier coverage, meaning that typically, excuse me, 30% of your vendors are already in the AvidPay network and are already receiving payment on behalf of other clients. We also have over 4,000 utility suppliers, so lots of gas, water, and electric vendors want to receive electronic payments. We have over 200,000 e-payment suppliers enrolled, and because of all of this, we have one of the highest e-payment adoption rates in the payment space. On average, it's 40%, meaning that we're able to convert those paper checks over to one of these electronic payments at that rate. And so again, huge benefit to you. It's a huge benefit to your suppliers. Again, all about the power of the network. Now, Daryl, I just want to ask quickly here if you would like to comment on anything maybe that you see or hear a lot about from folks that you talk to.
Again, the fact that it's such a supported experience makes the big difference for most of the customers that we talk to. They indicate that as the biggest gain. Also, the fact that Avid has dedicated support teams means there's much of the onus is taken off of them for managing the vendor relationship day to day. So all of the mundane tasks are handled by Avid. But also the fact that there are flexible payment options, the fact that there's a much lower cost to facilitate the payments makes a big difference for customers. And I think you really touched on something there with the growth of the network. I actually was doing a presentation yesterday and I had a slide from probably maybe a year or two ago, and it was just under 500,000. So the network is growing by leaps and bounds. And so to your point, I think customers are often surprised to find that so many of their own current vendors are already in the network.
Love that. And so the next slide will show us kind of an overview of the AvidPay. Oh, I don't see that one. Can we back up one slide? Huh. Well, I'll just talk real high level to it, and Donna, maybe you can chime in here. But basically, you know, what's happening? You're still creating your check run. You're still in control over selecting the payments. But then you're sending it over to the AvidPay network. Is that how you view it? Just kind of a touch of the button?
Pretty much, yeah. So the AP process is somewhat the same, only instead of manually entering invoices into Sage, we're on Sage 100. We have a file that comes over, and then when we initiate payment, same thing happens. A file goes back and forth and records everything, so it looks just the same as if you had cut a check. But we're not cutting the check or making the payment. If that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I've heard from numerous folks over the years that it makes the traditional bank reconciliation where you're, ticking and tying each month. Did this check clear? Did this check clear? That becomes a much easier process for you now.
100%, yes.
Awesome. Love to hear that. So to wrap up the automating piece, so here's a couple of key points about what you can expect after you automate. You can definitely expect to have streamlined processes and approvals, a centralized location for all of your invoices, increased visibility into your invoice and payment data, accurate reporting, and then of course increased fraud protection. So many efficiencies to be gained by automating. Any final thoughts, Daryl or Donna, before we kick it over to poll question and Q&A?
Daryl, you want to go first?
Oh, no, I'm going to defer to you as our customer. I think you should go first.
Oh, no, I just have to say everything worked. You know, you have a lot of angst when you sign up for something new and you can't see it. And you know, the process of changing over, you're kind of like any change of software, payroll system or whatever. You have a lot of angst because you can't really see it. But the team really helped us listen to us and helped us build it so that it works. And you know, the more familiar we got with it, the more comfortable, and it just does more and more all the time. And the one thing I'll say is that it's interesting to see that as you move along, you know, AvidXchange makes advances and changes things and listens to your suggestions and are always innovating. And I found that to be really good. But the comfort I had was that it cost exactly what we thought it was going to cost when we started. So we didn't, you know, come in thinking it was going to be X per month, and the bill is consistently exactly what we thought it would be. And we get the support we need, and it works really well. And errors, consistency of coding, everything.
Wonderful.
And just to piggyback on that, I'll say that we get the same kind of consistent feedback. Is that you know, we talk about trying to make people's lives easier, and we really do, because we give them a new level of efficiency. We drive the cost down. And when we talk about the cost in particular, one aspect, and really is what Donna just alluded to, is it's predictable. You know what to expect. There are no surprises. And one other thing that Donna alluded to that I'll reiterate is, you know, folks are pleasantly or pleased with the amount of innovation and forward thinking that Avid has in this space, and are appreciative of the fact that Avid is always improving.
Great, thank you for that. And thank you both so much for joining us today. And as mentioned, we're going to have another poll question.
Thank you, Rhonda. I've now launched the final poll as we open it up for questions. And as a reminder, AvidXchange is offering a $50 gift card if you select that you would like to see a personalized demo of AvidXchange in this poll question. We'll now open it up for questions. If you have any questions, please enter them into the questions section of your GoToWebinar. And since we have subject matter experts and a real Avid customer on the call, this is a great opportunity to have your questions answered in real time. And we do have a few questions that have come in during the presentation. The first being, how easy is it to get others outside of AP to use it, especially the approval process?
I guess I will be the speak to that.
I was going to say, you would be the great one to answer that.
In full disclosure, our accounting department has typically spoiled our people in the past, where we did a lot of coding for them. They were used to approving, but they were not used to coding, and we flipped the script on them, because as we're growing, accounting really doesn't know what everyone is doing and where things should fit. So we were offered a lot of support. The biggest hurdle we had was just the actual operational change of asking our people to start coding when they hadn't been coding before. The approval part, they took too well. They for the most part, everyone, once they got over change, which we know a lot of people don't like change in general, they have been happy with it. It's working really well, and as we get them to embrace more and more of it, they become happier and happier.
Great, we have another. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to thank Donna.
And we have another. How much does this cost? Is there a limit to the number of users?
There is not a limit to the number of users. As far as how much it costs, Daryl, would you like to take that one?
Sure. It's really fairly straightforward, because as Rhonda just mentioned, it's unlimited in terms of the number of users that can access the system through the portal. And so we're not counting noses, we're counting transactions. So there's a flat rate per invoice, depending on the number of invoices you're processing on average on a monthly basis. And that starts at $1.50. Payments, regardless of the payment type, are no more than typically no more than 89 cents per payment. There's an implementation fee, but that's based on the volume of transactions. So it's hard to say what exactly that would be. It really just depends on how many transactions you have. And then understand too that you're billed monthly in arrears for the transactions that you actually transacted. So it's not based on a forecast, it's based on actuals. You just get billed in March for what you did in February, as an example. And then beyond that, there's an annual charge of about $400 or so for a PO box, to which you can accept or paper invoices, or to be accurate, Avid can accept paper invoices on your behalf to a PO box that's dedicated to you. And then there's about $100 or so charge for a management fee for Avid Pay. So any proposal is going to have just those 5 line items on it. And so again, it makes it very predictable.
Great, and we have another. What happens if my vendor is not in your system?
So that's a great question. So if an invoice comes into a vendor that is not in Avid Invoice, then it actually will move to an exception queue for your team to manage, because we certainly wouldn't want to assume that that is a legitimate vendor or invoice. That decision, of course, is up to you. But then once you have created that vendor in your accounting system, then all that information will sync over into Avid Invoice.
And we have another. Do we have the ability to set up workflows with specific approvers for different types of invoices?
So yes, there's actually many different ways that you can set up your workflows. Again, it's designed to mirror your current process, what you're doing today. It's just, again, doing it now in an automated fashion.
We have a couple more. Does your system auto-recognize which month a bill should be posted to? Example, a January dated invoice could be for December or January posting date.
So yes, and you'll have the decision as to whether or not you want to have 2 periods open at one time. But that is definitely something that is doable and that will work for you if you do open 2 periods at one time.
And we have one more that I believe is for Donna. What made you decide on AvidXchange?
Well, I looked into 1 or 2 others, and it's been a couple, well, year and a half, almost 2 years now, so I can't remember. We looked into a couple other ones, but they didn't specifically integrate with Sage. And we liked the fact that, well, we're in North Carolina and they're in Charlotte, which has no bearing, but it was kind of attractive to us. And we just, after talking with them and looking at the product, it just seemed so intuitive that we didn't actually vet out a lot of other ones because we really wanted the integration with our Sage program.
Perfect, and that looks like all the questions we have. So thank you so much, Rhonda, Donna, and Daryl, for your informative presentation and for taking the time to be here today. For more information on AP automation, check out our website at swktech.com and click on AvidXchange under AP and Payment Automation in the Products tab. Thank you everyone for attending our webinar. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.